Hello, Care Partners. Welcome back to Memory Care with Teresa Youngstrom. So glad you're here. Thank you for the comments that you're making after the podcast. Thank you for questions that are coming in. That helps so much. And then we can help you to dig in a little deeper and be able to provide even more information in your situation. You know, we always talk about if you've met one person with dementia, well, you've met one person and they're all going to be unique and they're all going to be different and their needs are going to be different. And you know, I'm all about how do you join them on the journey. It's not about getting them to straighten up and act right or about sedating them into submission. You know, I want to join them on the journey and see what they're trying to communicate to me as their skills decline. So I'm very excited today to share with you Sarah Hyde-Williams. You know, our guest today, I heard her speak a while back and she knew so much about Lewy body. I was thrilled to hear someone who had all this information. She's from Texas, and let me tell you about Sarah Hyde-Williams. She is deeply passionate about serving our seniors and their families and navigating the elder care and senior living industry. She guides families through what is often a difficult and overwhelming time, becoming a trusted resource and an unbiased confidant while helping families to achieve peace with their choices. The focus of her practice includes care partner and professional caregiver support, consulting, education, training, and senior housing placement. There's a lot to unfold there and talk about. Over the past 23 plus years, she's held various roles within assisted living, dementia supportive communities, home health, hospice, and she's the owner of Senior Living Advisors of Austin and the Collaborators in Care. She holds numerous certifications as consultant, trainer, and coach. Please help me welcome Sarah Hyde-Williams.
Hey, Teresa.
Hey, Sarah. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
What a pleasure.
Across the miles, you know, I'm in Cincinnati and you're out there in Texas. And this is just so great. Like I said, when I heard you speak for the group a while back, the depth of your understanding of people living with Lewy body was incredible. And I knew we had to get you on the podcast. Besides, it's Lewy body month, isn't it? Right? Isn't October? So happens to be the month that we're going to be putting this out. So exciting. Well, let me get started. What is Lewy body disease and how is it diagnosed?
That's a lot to unpack there.
Yes.
So Lewy body disease, oftentimes people refer to it as Lewy body dementia, but in essence, Teresa, you and I both speak about dementia as an umbrella.
Right.
And so underneath that umbrella, we've got Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body disease, frontotemporal vascular numerous. But like I said, under that umbrella of dementia, there is Lewy body disease is an umbrella in and of itself, which encompasses dementia with Lewy bodies, which is the cognitive piece of this spectrum, and Parkinson's disease dementia. Also multiple cortical atrophy, but it doesn't typically carry a lot of the cognitive piece of this. So in a nutshell, that's in essence how we draw the analogy of dementia or Lewy body disease under that, but characterized by a couple of different characterizations of fluctuations of cognition and abilities, REM, sleep behavior disorder, and hallucinations, delusions, Capgras syndrome, and reduplicative paramnesia. We see a lot of that.
You might have to unpackage those last two symptoms.
Yeah. Capgras syndrome is typically what we refer to as imposter syndrome. I have worked with one family that was her only symptom. And so in essence, she and her husband had been married for 40, 45 years. And at any given moment and any given day, he could walk through into the living room and she would not know who he was. Very much so thought he was there to do her harm. And so we came up with some strategies to help that. Reduplicative paramnesia is when I'm here in my house, but I think there's another house somewhere else.
Okay.
Or that my wife that I've been living with for 40 years, there's another one or two or three wives somewhere else, and maybe what their roles are. One's the maid, one's the cook. Um, it's it's an interesting piece of Lewy body.
Very interesting. Yeah. And coming alongside and just joining them on those journeys can be tough. I did have a client who she didn't remember the current husband. She was remembering husband number one, who of course had passed away a long time ago. So she was back in time looking, oh my gosh, I've got to get home for Fred. And the current spouse was really upset about all that. And it took a lot to get him to come alongside and be willing to go ahead and put her in the car and go for a drive, and be able then to get an ice cream and circle back home. And that usually was all it took, was for him to say, oh yeah, we better get home for Fred, and to go and do. And wow. So it seems like Lewy body is becoming more and more prevalent. Who should I go to for proper diagnosis?
I'm going to unpack your earlier statement that very much are we seeing a lot more of it because more folks are learning about Lewy body, therefore going and getting a proper diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah. So most folks go to their primary care physician. And if you've got a very knowledgeable primary care physician that knows about Lewy body, you may get your diagnosis there. Otherwise, most primary cares will refer you to a neurologist. And whether or not that neurologist is knowledgeable enough about Lewy body, they may refer you to a movement disorder specialist, which is typically your best option when it comes to diagnosis.
Really? So the movement disorder. So what is it about Lewy that makes me challenged in my movement?
So those are all those supporting characteristics we see, is that stiffness, that rigidity, the autonomic nervous system dysfunction, the fluctuations of blood pressure that we oftentimes see, the what we typically refer to as that delayed gastric dumping. My pills or my medications will sit in my stomach for 2 hours before they empty into the rest of my digestive tract, and therefore they can't be used. So we stay in that stiff, rigid movement for even longer. But it affects that portion of the brain that's very, that limbic system, that's very core, very primal, and that cerebral, the cerebellum that affects that motor dysfunction.
Wow. Okay. So I'm guessing you would say it's very important that we get a diagnosis.
It is incredibly important for research dollars, for studies to be put out, by specific education to be provided, support groups. Yeah. So if we see a lot more folks being diagnosed with Lewy body, we're going to put more money and more effort and more education to that. A really important piece to Lewy body is that certain medications do not mix with Lewy body.
Right.
One of the things, and I am not a medical physician, however, and I'm not giving medical advice, but I oftentimes tell my folks, list as an allergy some of these atypical antipsychotics that we typically prescribe for the hallucinations and the delusions, but are not great for this disease state, like Haldol or some of the others that are typical of that.
Yeah, that is so hard. We run into that all the time, Sarah, that, the doctor really doesn't have an answer and he doesn't have your techniques to teach. And so really all they have is another prescription for an antipsychotic. And, I have the Beers criteria on my website for that reason, so that folks can go there and look and see if your medications are on a list that say it is, suggested or not suggested. And, our seniors should not be on antipsychotics. You and I both know that. It's devastating. We're going to do better though, because we're doing better. We've got research. We got you out there. We're training up people. So this is a common thing that I hear. Is it true that people with Lewy body, they get violent and aggressive? Is it true? And does it happen to everybody?
This is why I got into Lewy body work
Yeah.
specifically. I've been in long-term care for many years. And what I was seeing is that in the business development side, I would bring back clinicals to my nurse in the community. They'd be scanning down through there. They'd get to violent and aggressive, or they'd come to a diagnosis of Lewy body and they say, no, can't take them. Can't take them.
Right.
They're not going to be something that we can do. And kudos to that nurse for recognizing what they can and cannot do. But
True.
also it's this misnomer. It affects that limbic system, that core drive of survival of fight or flight. And so if we can put ourselves in their position, high anxiety, depression, apathy, anxiety is huge for these folks. That if we can put ourselves in their shoes, they may be seeing something, feeling something, hearing something that may or may not be there. Mm-hmm. Delusions, paranoia. So that in and of itself doesn't make them violent or aggressive. But mm-hmm. what it does is they're in self-protection mode.
For sure.
And so they are defending life and limb. And whether or not that is to run, hide, or fight your way out of it, then that is just a very core human component. When I meet with families that have this diagnosis and we start looking at a long-term care option, tell me about your person. Mm-hmm. How have they always reacted? Are they mm-hmm. an avoider? Or they'll challenge you every day of the week? Because we want to make sure that we let that long-term care setting know that, hey, this is their this is their reaction. Mm-hmm. We might want to limit the way that we approach or the sensory overload that they may get, or we might want to limit certain situations for them that may keep them out of that fight or flight mode.
Right. Wow, that is so good. You made me think of a gentleman that I knew. I got the call after they had already moved him into a brand new memory care. Okay. And I got the call from the wife because they did kick him out and send him back home to her. And she was devastated because of all the trouble that it took to actually get him moved into a place. But they didn't check on the residents very often. And he thought he was prisoner. Mm-hmm. And he had to devise a method to get out. So he pushed the dresser. The windows were up high in the rooms. And he pushed a dresser over. And then he got the bedside table, put that on top of that. I mean, this is a strong man, like late 50s. And then he got a chair and he put it on top of that, and by the time they found him, he was taking the window apart and, he was going to get out because it just made sense in his mind that he was being held. He's a prisoner. And he needed to get out of there. I preach it to the choir, but I'm usually saying, don't be a judge and throw the hammer down and think what's going on here and that they all just get aggressive and you have to sedate them into submission. I want you to be a good detective. And can you start trying to figure out what exactly is going on here? What are they trying to communicate to me? Mm-hmm. What is their body language? What are they telling me? Oh, so I love that. Well, what kind of support's available for persons living with Lewy body?
Quite a few. I'll start with the Lewy Body Dementia Association. I am a volunteer facilitator with them.
Is that local or is it international?
It is a national organization. They are based in Atlanta, Georgia, but anywhere on the planet can log into that website and receive support, whether or not there would be a local support group there in your area. But a lot of especially since March of 2020, that little event there, a lot of our groups have gone online. So I have facilitated our group here in the Central Texas area for almost 8 years.
Wonderful.
And so before March of 2020, we were all meeting in person. We had 4 groups in the Austin area, but all of our groups have gone online. So there are groups not only for care partners, so for friends and family. We will invite professionals from time to time into those groups to learn more. But we also have quite a few of our groups specifically for the person living with Lewy body disease. We have a couple of groups around the nation, ours included, that is called Living Together with Lewy. So it is a dyad group for both diagnosed individual and their care partner. And so that support is available to you. There are numerous Facebook groups. The Lewy Body Dementia Association has a tremendous website full of studies and research opportunities, just a ton of information, but also with a really good movement disorder specialist who recognizes the value of an educator. Then I work with a couple of here in the Austin area. They will refer specifically to me. They'll give the diagnosis, they'll write the prescriptions, and then they'll say, here's Sarah's contact information. She'll fill in all the blanks for you, do some really good deep dive education on what this looks like, how it affects your everyday life, and plug you into resources. So a lot of our movement disorder specialists have a person like me. You just have to ask for it.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll make sure that information gets in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really important. How can we as care partners best adapt our care approach with our persons living with Lewy body? What advice do we give to care partners?
Yeah, a lot of it is about approach. We, Teresa, you and I preach all the time about approach. Want to make sure that we don't touch without getting auditory regard or visual regard. We want to get in their visual space, definitely. But we also want to make sure that they know we're there and we're friendly and that we're not here to do them any harm. But also I've approached persons in an active hallucination. They're unsure whether I'm another hallucination or not. Mm-hmm. And to give them time and space. Their frontal lobe has difficulty with processing. And so oftentimes 30, 60, 90 days for seconds for them to recognize that we are there, we are friendly to them, and we are a connection to be made. Allowing them that process time will allow them to interact with us much better.
That's good. I heard once that you could advise someone who had awareness, they knew they were having this and they were having hallucination, to maybe throw a tennis ball at the hallucination and just to verify for themselves if it was real or not. Is that accurate? Is that a good technique? What do you suggest?
Well, first and foremost, they're going to have to use that frontal lobe to recognize and to think through and process, use that logic and reasoning brain.
So they have to still have that part.
In the first place. Yeah. But oftentimes I'll see that they're having this reaction, which means I can see on their face that they're having some semblance of a hallucination. I can approach within their visual field and I can stand there. I can continue to be that friendly face. I'm not a 8-foot purple clown. I am Sarah. I'm Sarah. And I'm extending my hand to you. And they know that I continue with the smile on my face. And they know that I am friendly and that I am to be trusted more than anything.
Right. I have advised a woman once that when she was having a hallucination, it was middle of the night. I was doing rounds on a unit and I heard talking. She was in her bed sitting up and pitch black, and she was having a conversation. And she actually, when I knocked in, introduced myself, she's like, well, come on in, look who's here. And she was going on to introduce me to who was there. I don't know that she was Lewy body or this was medication, related. Don't know. But all I can say is I just said, oh my goodness, I wouldn't interrupt your party. I just heard voices and wanted to make sure you're okay. You know what? Enjoy your time together and I'll circle back later and check on you again. Okay, honey. And I just closed the door. And is that okay? Is that a good technique?
Perfect. You eased anxiety. You did not put a feeling on her that it was anything out of the ordinary, should be ashamed for it. This is not the reality that we all live in. You acknowledged the place where she was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it didn't seem harmful. And so another time, though, a grandma was complaining these kids are making me quite irritated. And I actually chased the kids away, and then asked her if she could come help me because I'm trying to make these cookies. And I know that you're good at this. And I want to be able to ask you questions if I need help. And she ended up coming with me just to, change her environment. And the asking them for help seems to be a good technique. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, very much so. I have a lot of care partners that say that we're getting ready to sit down for dinner, and why am I not serving the other three people at the table?
Yeah.
Kicking it back to them. Should we go ahead and fix them a plate?
Put more plates. Why
See
not?
see what they say. Does it hurt anything to dish more food out on another plate? You can always put it back in the pot should you not need it, but you're in essence normalizing.
Yeah, normalizing. I think that is so important, but I do find that families are challenged by that. I think I've been doing it so long that it's right there for me, and I can go with that. But for some, two things. One, they may just not be easy to switch gears on it and then treat her as if she's right when she's wrong. I also occasionally have the family that says, I'm not going to lie to her. I don't care. I'm not going to lie to her. I'm not going to lie to her. And I'm like, okay, what do you say in those situations? That's so tough because I know I can make it easier if we go with their flow, but sometimes they dig a heel in on that.
Think of it this way. We're not lying to them. We're asking them to continue to tell us where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Should we fix a plate for them? Nah, they told me they already ate before they came. They're just going to sit here and hang out with us while we have dinner. Cool. That's great. Awesome.
Perfect.
But we're asking for their input. We're asking them for their judgment. What do you think? What should be our next step? And they will fill in those blanks for us.
Incredible. Incredible. I heard one person describe Lewy body as sometimes they're on and sometimes they're off, and that's when they're hallucinating. Do you find that sometimes the brain is functioning and you wouldn't think they had anything, but then there's like a switch that flips, and then they're not themselves, and the anxiety and the irritability and maybe I need to escape might kick in. What are your thoughts?
That is the biggest challenge that families have when they come to me. And when I describe to them that they have this fluctuation of cognition and abilities, we have we have good days and bad days. We have moments that no one would even know that there's anything going on. We're incredibly lucid. We have great short-term memories. We are able to sit and have a conversation. Nobody would ever know. But then other times they're highly anxious, incredibly paranoid, in this delusional state. And that's when that limbic system just kicks into that overdrive of fight or flight. We do have moments to where cognition is better than others.
Mm-hmm.
We also have moments in time to where physical abilities are better than others. Some days we are up and walking with our cane or our walker. There are other days to where we can just barely get transferred in and out of a wheelchair.
Wow.
Oftentimes my families describe this as this roller coaster.
Okay. Okay. That's a good visual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So would you say Lewy body can be misdiagnosed as Parkinson's or vice versa?
All the time.
Okay.
So what's really interesting is, again, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
I cannot even go anywhere near medical advice.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I have a family that comes to me and I ask, do they have a diagnosis?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's either Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, I dig a little deeper.
Okay.
I dig a lot deeper because then I'll say, okay, tell me what that looks like on an everyday basis. And if I hear these red flags, if I ask a few pointed questions that I know are Lewy body, but then others that are Alzheimer's disease, on which side do they lie? And truly, is this an Alzheimer's diagnosis? Could it be Parkinson's disease with Alzheimer's?
Yeah,
Very
because we can get
possible.
mixed picture.
Yes. Very well could be Parkinson's with no cognitive dysfunction or vascular, some semblance of other cognitive decline. But it's really that 1 year rule that we look at. If within 1 year we have the cognitive piece, but we develop the motor dysfunction, we typically call it dementia with Lewy bodies.
Okay.
If they have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, and if within that 1 year they begin developing some of the cognitive or non-motor dysfunction, then oftentimes we'll deem it Parkinson's disease dementia.
Okay. Yeah, because it seems like not everybody with Parkinson's develops the dementia, but I'm seeing probably half around here.
The statistic is 70%.
70, more than half. Okay.
And
Worse than I thought.
more men than women,
Okay.
more African Americans than Caucasians.
Wow.
And so this is the reason it's important to get a diagnosis. We want to know where maybe it is
And that's
general.
Parkinson's, not Lewy. That's Parkinson's.
That's Lewy body.
That's Lewy. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. But more men than women with Parkinson's.
Okay. Okay. Around here, they have a nonprofit Parkinson's community fitness, and the goal is to just move it or lose it, and we just try and keep offering more and more and more activities for people living with the disease with Parkinson's so that, they can stay physically active. And even if they have to relearn how to walk, we've got some cool things that can happen. Should people with Lewy body do the same thing?
I oftentimes recommend that what is recommended for Parkinson's that we do, especially with the physical exercise, walk, boxing is great because we're crossing that midline.
Yes.
Because a lot of our Lewy body folks have the difficulty with balance and coordination like our Parkinson's folks do.
Yeah. So falls, I would say if you can go back to the beginning and give me the common things that you see with a Lewy body diagnosis, just to spell that out one more time for my audience.
Yeah. The fluctuations of cognition and abilities.
So I can think clearly, but then I can't. Then I'm out in left field.
Roller coaster, good days, hours, weeks, but then it just goes back and forth.
Okay.
REM sleep disorder, sleep behavior disorder, which is rapid eye movement, sleep behavior disorder. So if during that rapid eye movement sleep, where our brain flushes itself of all the toxins, in a healthy brain, our bodies are paralyzed. Not so for persons with Lewy body disease. If in their mind, in their dream state, they are running from a bear, they are in their bed physically running from a bear. So oftentimes they will fall out of bed, throw themselves out of bed. I oftentimes get real personal with my marital couples and ask, are you still sleeping together? Oh, no way. Couldn't sleep with them any longer. So we're in 2 separate bedrooms.
Okay. Boy, that's a red flag.
Red flag.
Okay.
And then this whole, what we also might deem as non-reality type hallucinations, delusions, Capgras syndrome, reduplicative paramnesia, this illusions or imposter, where my reality is not yours.
Got it.
But the supportive characteristics, what may or may not be described as Parkinson's, stiff rigidity, bradykinesia, these type, shuffling gait, difficulty with fine motor skills, both fingers and mouth, difficulty with swallowing, constipation, orthostatic hypotension, all of that can be part and parcel for Lewy body.
Wow. As far as tremors and things, just something that I noticed, it seemed like the people with the Parkinson's seemed to have a resting tremor. And then it seemed like the people with Lewy, I wasn't noticing it until they went to grab for their cup and then they spilled it all over the place. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Oh.
I ask families that is it at rest, which is a resting tremor, or is it when they go to use that limb or hand, do you see the tremor at that point? That is an intention tremor. Resting tremor is more indicative of Parkinson's disease. Intention tremor is more Lewy body.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wanted to make sure of that with you. Do you have a story of someone who came to you and they had these challenges and you gave them these techniques and we were able to help her or him work with their loved one? Do you have a story that you could share? People love stories. I know you got a million stories without without giving any, identification factors. Tell
Yeah.
us a story.
So I'll say in very general terms.
Thank you.
Most of the time when I am called in with a movement disorder specialist to give education, then more often than not, I meet with that family for sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours. And really what it is, it's to normalize.
Mm-hmm.
This is not to say, well, it's no big deal, nothing to worry about, is they are not crazy.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, what you are describing is Lewy body.
Mm-hmm.
The diagnosis appears to be correct. Yes. And here's all the supports, all the resources that you are ever going to need. And I always end the conversation with, call me at any moment of any time if I can be of any further help to you.
Wow, what an awesome resource. And you know what? That just means so much. That means so much to the care partner for sure. Because they're scared, they're afraid. They don't know this person. Certain times they're like, they don't recognize who they are. It's very frightening.
Yeah.
Wow, Sarah, you have so much to offer. Tell me, oh, we're about out of time. Hey, how can my audience get more of you? How can they reach out? How can they contact you? Tell me how I can make you more available.
So we do have a Facebook group for our business. Well, we started doing placement initially, but we've moved into more education and training. And so you can always reach out to me by my cell phone. Don't know, Teresa, if you're going to list that, but my cell phone is readily available.
I can do that with your permission.
Yep.
I'll put in the show notes. Okay.
Always reach out to me by email if you want to be a part of any of the support groups that I offer. Send me a quick email. I'll have your email in return and I'll add you to the email distribution list. You're welcome to join.
That's incredible. What a great resource. All right, everybody. I can't thank you enough for being here, Sarah. And I just think we're right on the edge of learning more and more about Lewy body. It's become more prevalent and it's out there. We're diagnosing it left and right. And it's one of the scarier ones, though, honestly. It's faster moving and it's unpredictable, less predictable. We talk about Alzheimer's. Well, it starts off mental, eventually become physical. Parkinson's starts off physical and can eventually, add the dementia portion. Louis just so much more unpredictable. And don't you think it's more frightening for most people?
It is. It's a lot more frightening because their reality is not ours. We don't know how to wrap our brain around that. And oftentimes they're afraid of us because of that fight or flight.
Yeah. And if I can steal your words, helping them with normalcy, let them feel like, oh, this isn't a big deal. This is okay.
And
yeah. And we can go with their flow. Okay. So great. Listen, thanks so much for being here. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to see Sarah Hyde-Williams. I am so impressed. I have even more questions. She's full of information. She's my Lewy body go-to. So down in Austin, Texas, I will have her information in the show notes. Make sure you watch this again and again. If you're serving someone or concerned someone in your life, you're seeing these red flags, get more information on it. Listen, education is really so important so that we can really come alongside and join these individuals on their journey. It's a scary journey and they're going to need our help. And you're going to need help too. And I hope that you'll plug in to Sarah Hyde-Williams, to her organizations, and find that support there. All right. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. That helps us so much. And to get this information out there far and wide so that we can continue to serve you on your journey with someone. Okay. Keep in mind, you got this.